General Motors didn't just kill one brand, they killed 7. And after destroying billions in heritage, firing hundreds of thousands of workers, and betraying generations of loyal customers, they came to you, the American taxpayer, and said, "Give us $50 billion or we die." Let's dig up the bodies. Between 1897 and 2010, General Motors built some of the most iconic automobile brands in American history. Then they systematically destroyed every single one of them. 7 brands, over $15 billion in wasted investments, hundreds of thousands of jobs eliminated, millions of loyal customers abandoned, and when the bill came due, they turned to the American taxpayer and asked for $50 billion to survive. This is the story of GM's graveyard, 7 dead brands, 1 massive bailout, and a lesson in corporate failure that cost everyone except the people responsible. Chapter 1, Oldsmobile. Oldsmobile wasn't just GM's oldest brand, it was America's oldest automotive nameplate. Founded in 1897, Oldsmobile pioneered mass production techniques and became a staple of American driveways for over a century. 3 generations of families bought Oldsmobile. The brand represented reliability, consistency, and trust. By the year 2000, Oldsmobile was still turning a profit. The brand had over 2 million loyal customers and dealers were actively selling vehicles. But GM's leadership had decided the name sounded outdated. They wanted to attract younger buyers and believed Oldsmobile's heritage was a liability rather than an asset. In December 2000, GM announced they would phase out Oldsmobile entirely. The shutdown cost GM $1.5 billion, purely in dealer compensation and restructuring costs. Not a single dollar of that went toward improving the brand or developing new products. On April 29, 2004, the final Oldsmobile Alero rolled off the assembly line in Lansing, Michigan. Workers at the plant reportedly became emotional as they completed the last vehicle, marking the end of 107 years of continuous production. The result of eliminating Oldsmobile? GM did not capture younger buyers. Market share continued to decline. The $1.5 billion spent accomplished nothing strategically. First brand eliminated. Chapter 2, Pontiac. Pontiac built its reputation on performance. "We build excitement" wasn't just a slogan, it was the brand's entire identity. The Pontiac GTO essentially created the muscle car segment in 1964. The Firebird and Trans Am became cultural icons throughout the 70s and 80s. Pontiac successfully marketed to younger, performance-oriented buyers, the exact demographic GM claimed to want. But Pontiac's success created an internal problem. The brand was competing with Chevrolet for the same customers, and Chevrolet was GM's flagship division. Rather than celebrating having 2 successful brands, GM began to cannibalize Pontiac. They implemented aggressive badge engineering, taking Chevrolet platforms and simply rebadging them as Pontiacs with minimal differentiation. The Pontiac Aztek, launched in 2001, became notorious as one of the worst designed vehicles in automotive history. It damaged Pontiac's performance image irreparably. When the 2008 financial crisis hit, GM targeted Pontiac for elimination despite the brand still having profitable segments and popular models like the G8 and Solstice receiving critical acclaim. Pontiac was officially discontinued in April 2009 after 84 years of production. The cost to close Pontiac and compensate dealers exceeded $1 billion. Second brand eliminated. Chapter 3, Saturn. Saturn represented GM's most ambitious attempt to compete with Japanese automakers. Launched in 1985 with a $7 billion investment, Saturn was designed as a completely separate company within GM. New manufacturing facilities, new dealer network, new corporate culture. The strategy initially worked. Saturn vehicles were well received. The no-haggle pricing model and customer service approach generated exceptional loyalty ratings throughout the 1990s. But GM's leadership couldn't resist interfering. Investment in new Saturn models dried up. The brand began receiving rebadged vehicles from other GM divisions rather than unique products. The Saturn Vue was mechanically identical to the Chevrolet Equinox. The Saturn Aura shared its platform with the Pontiac G6. Customers recognized these vehicles weren't the different kind of car company Saturn had promised. By 2009, Saturn was marked for closure during GM's bankruptcy restructuring. Penske Automotive Group attempted to purchase Saturn and continue operations independently. The deal progressed to advanced stages before GM withdrew support, effectively blocking the sale. Saturn was discontinued in October 2009. Total investment in Saturn over 24 years, approximately $7 billion. Return on that investment, complete brand failure. Third brand eliminated. Chapter 4, Hummer. Hummer began as AM General's civilian version of the military HMMWV. GM acquired the brand in 1998 and expanded the lineup with the H2 and H3 models. Throughout the mid-2000s, Hummer represented the peak of excess in the SUV market. The H2 averaged less than 10 miles per gallon in city driving. But with gas prices relatively low, Hummer became a status symbol, particularly among celebrities and affluent buyers. The 2008 oil crisis destroyed Hummer's market position overnight. As gasoline prices approached $4 per gallon, consumers abandoned large SUVs entirely. Hummer sales collapsed from over 70,000 units in 2006 to fewer than 10,000 in 2009. GM attempted to sell the brand to Chinese manufacturer Sichuan Tongzhong, but the deal failed to receive Chinese government approval. Hummer was discontinued in 2010. GM destroyed remaining inventory and closed all facilities. In 2020, GM revived the Hummer name as an all-electric pickup truck brand, demonstrating they understood the nameplate had value, they simply mismanaged it the first time. The remaining casualties. 3 additional brands fell during GM's restructuring period. Saab Automobile. GM acquired 50% of Saab in 1989 and full ownership by 2000. Rather than preserving Saab's Swedish engineering heritage, GM forced the brand to use shared platforms with Chevrolet and other divisions. Saab enthusiasts considered this a betrayal of the brand's identity. GM sold Saab in 2010, the brand declared bankruptcy shortly after. Geo, launched in 1989 as a sub-brand selling rebadged Japanese vehicles, primarily from Toyota and Suzuki. The brand existed purely for marketing purposes and was discontinued in 1997 when GM decided the strategy wasn't sustainable. Opel, GM's European division since 1929, Opel consistently lost money under GM ownership. Rather than fix the operational issues, GM sold Opel to PSA Group, Peugeot, in 2017. Under new ownership, Opel returned to profitability within 2 years. 7 brands. Decades of automotive heritage. Billions in investments. All eliminated or sold off. Now comes the part where American taxpayers enter the story. The bailout. By November 2008, General Motors was facing bankruptcy. Decades of mismanagement, quality issues, and strategic failures had culminated in a financial crisis the company couldn't survive without intervention. GM's leadership testified before Congress, requesting emergency financial assistance. The argument was straightforward: GM was too large to fail. Bankruptcy would eliminate millions of jobs across the automotive supply chain and devastate the American economy. The request, $50 billion in loans and equity investment. Congress and the Bush administration approved emergency loans in December 2008. The Obama administration provided additional funding in 2009, bringing total government assistance to $49.5 billion. This money came from American taxpayers. So what did GM do with this bailout funding? They accelerated the elimination of Pontiac, Saturn, Saab, and Hummer, the very brands this story has been documenting. Over 50,000 workers were terminated. Dozens of manufacturing plants were permanently closed. Meanwhile, GM's executive compensation continued. In 2009, during the height of the bailout, CEO Fritz Henderson received a $9 million compensation package. The optics were catastrophic. American workers were losing jobs. American taxpayers were funding the company's survival. GM executives were receiving million-dollar bonuses. In 2013, GM completed its restructuring and repurchased all government-owned shares, returning to private ownership. Final accounting from the U.S. Treasury Department, the government lost $11.2 billion on the GM bailout. $11 billion of taxpayer money gone. Not repaid. Written off as a loss. GM's official statement expressed gratitude for the government's support. That bailout should have been a wake-up call. A moment for GM to fundamentally change its corporate culture and decision-making processes. Instead, GM continued the same patterns. In 2014, the ignition switch scandal became public. GM had installed defective ignition switches in millions of vehicles between 2003 and 2011. These switches could randomly shut off while driving, disabling power steering, brakes, and airbags. The defect was linked to 124 confirmed deaths. Internal GM documents revealed the company knew about this problem for over a decade but didn't issue recalls due to cost concerns. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration fined GM $900 million. Additional lawsuits cost billions more. But the pattern continued. In 2018, GM announced closures of several North American plants, including facilities in Ohio and Michigan, states where workers had made significant concessions during the bankruptcy to save the company. These closures occurred while GM simultaneously expanded operations in China and Mexico. The workers who sacrificed to save GM during bankruptcy saw their plants close anyway. The communities that supported GM received no loyalty in return. As of 2024, General Motors remains profitable. Stock prices have recovered. Executive compensation remains substantial. The $11 billion taxpayers lost was never recovered. The workers who lost jobs during restructuring weren't compensated for their sacrifices. The customers who remained loyal to eliminated brands received no acknowledgement. The lesson. Here are the numbers. 7 automotive brands eliminated between 2000 and 2010. Combined investment in those brands, over $15 billion. Government bailout, $49.5 billion. Taxpayer loss, $11.2 billion. Workers terminated, over 50,000. Plants closed, dozens. Executive bonuses during bailout, millions of dollars. Deaths from covered-up ignition switch defects, 124 confirmed. What's the lesson here? This isn't just about bad business decisions. Every company makes mistakes. The automotive industry is competitive and unforgiving. The lesson is about accountability, or the complete absence of it. GM systematically destroyed profitable brands through mismanagement. They covered up deadly safety defects. They took taxpayer money to survive, then continued the same behavior that led to failure in the first place. And there were no consequences for the people making these decisions. The workers faced consequences. The customers faced consequences. The taxpayers faced consequences. The executives who made these decisions? They walked away wealthy. That's the real story here. Not just corporate failure, but the realization that when you're large enough, failure doesn't matter. Someone else always pays the price. GM's graveyard contains 7 brands, $15 billion in wasted investments, and $11 billion in taxpayer money that's never coming back. But the real casualty is the principle that failure should have consequences. Because GM learned the most important lesson of all: if you're big enough, you'll always be saved. And someone else will always pay for it. If you found this story revealing, subscribe for more. Leave a comment with your thoughts. Should GM have been allowed to fail in 2008? Or was the bailout necessary despite its costs? Thanks for watching.